Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Grelnick, the founder and executive director of the Outpost Performance Space in Albuquerque, and also the director, along with Joel Alberts from the Lenzic Performing Arts Center in Santa Fe, of the New Mexico Jazz Festival, which is now in its 15th year. A.B. Spellman has been an integral part of the festival ever since its inception in 2006, presenting a Meet the NEA Jazz Masters conversation at the Lenzic every year. He's spoken to Sonny Rollins, McCoy Tyner, Paquito de Rivera, Eddie Palmieri, John Hendricks, and Sheila Jordan, Kenny Barron, and Dave Holland, and so many more, including Albert Tootie Heath's older brother, saxophonist Jimmy Heath, in 2010. And it was in that conversation that AB pointed to Tootie in the audience and said, Tootie certainly deserves to be named an NEA Jazz Master as well. And this year, thankfully, that came to fruition, and here we are today. We thank them both for being here and doing this special online presentation, which is part of a series of New Mexico Jazz Festival revisited videos, which will be airing over the next few months, culling material from the previous years of the festival. The Jazz Festival would like to thank our sponsors and funders, including the National Endowment for the Arts, the Command Foundation, the City of Albuquerque, Lynn Slade and Susan Zimmerman, and many more. A.B. Spellman, retired deputy chairman at the National Endowment of the Arts, where he worked for 30 years, was central to the establishment of the NEA Jazz Masters program, which was established in 1982. He's a renowned poet, jazz critic, biographer, and champion of the music. He wrote reviews for all the major jazz magazines. He published his first book of poetry, The Beautiful Days, in 1966. His seminal book, Four Lives in the Bebop Business, also known as Four Lives, Black Music, which featured the lives and music of Cecil Taylor, Jackie McLean, Ornette Coleman, and Herbie Nichols, was published in 1966. And I think it can safely be said that it changed the world of jazz writing. Certainly for me, who read it in 1970, that was the case. To this day, it remains one of the best books ever written in the field of jazz literature. AB remains active to this day, publishing new books of poetry, developing operas, librettos, and much more. It's been an honor for me and for others in New Mexico to get to know him and to have him call these annual conversations, which he does, one of his favorite gigs. Albert Tootie Heath is known as the consummate jazz drummer, a genius. Rather than going into depth about Tootie's storied career, which I know AB will be doing in the upcoming conversation, I'll simply congratulate him on his most recent well-deserved honor of being named an NEA Jazz Master, which is one of the jazz world's highest honors. I will also say, on behalf of those of us living here in New Mexico, we are pleased and honored that Tootie and his wife Beverly decided to move to Santa Fe in 2013. It's been an honor and a pleasure to get to know Tootie, who has become a humble and integral part of our New Mexico jazz community. So with that, I welcome A.B. Spellman and Albert Tootie Heath, two venerable jazz legends, for yet another Meet the NEA Jazz Masters conversation.
Now, for those of you who might need a little bit of a précis on who Tootie Heath is, he is a consummate hard bop drummer. And I don't mean to limit him to hard bop, but that's where I place much of his work. He's worked with J.J. Johnson, Wes Montgomery, the Jazz Tet, that's the Benny Golson, Art Farmer, McCoy Tyner Jazz Tet, all three jazz masters. Cedar Walton, Bobby Timmons, Kenny Drew, Sonny Rollins, Dexter Gordon, Herbie Hancock, Friedrich Gulda, Nina Simone, Yusef Lateef, and a whole bunch of other people in the world. Now, that's the mighty roster of jazz masters there, Tootie. Before I get into going further, I want to say one thing. It's a little late for commiseration, but your brother Jimmy's death really hurt me.
Me too. I miss him,
yeah.
man.
I knew Percy to say hello to, but Jimmy was a friend, and I thought he was he was one of the best people I knew. A real gentleman.
Special, man. Anything I needed to know about the family, I could always call Jimmy up and get the information I needed.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me a good Jimmy story.
Well, he's a little short guy, number one. So I was at his house when he died. So I went over to him. And they had him out in the living room in the bed, you know, in the hospital beds. and he was just laying there. He couldn't talk, but he could give me the 2 thumbs up that he could hear everything I was saying. So I said to him, I said, look, you little, if you die, I'm gonna save me a seat when you get to hell. And he did like this, to let me know he heard that. But he didn't answer me. But he did get to hell before me. He's there waiting for me now.
The first time I really noticed him was in we were at a luncheon for the NEA Jazz Masters the year he got the award. And the chairman was late getting there, and everybody was sitting around the table feeling uncomfortable because nobody was in charge of the table. So Jimmy took over. He just started talking. And it's the first time I'd been in his company. And he just started telling stories. And you know how it is with a bunch of jazz musicians sitting around the table telling stories. And that's always a great experience for, you know, a jazz tourist like me. And he just sort of saved the afternoon. And the meeting was alive and intimate by the time the chairman got there. So he was a great presence. I really admired him.
Jimmy Heath had some great stories, man, that he would tell. And some that he and I shared, you know, that were not musicians, just family stuff. But
Yeah.
I learned a lot of stuff from Jimmy Heath, not only to play music, but also to be a decent human being, because he was exactly that.
That he was. Now, tell me about that. I mean, you and Jimmy were from one of those jazz families. There are a couple of them, like the Jones brothers, the Heath brothers. The Jones brothers produced 3 jazz masters. I mean, Thad never was made a jazz master, but we know he would have been if he had just lived a little bit longer. You know, Elvin and Thad and Hank Jones. And then you had your family, you and Percy and Jimmy, all jazz masters. Was it a family thing, or did Jimmy and Percy sort of inspire you to go into the music? Did you want to be like them?
Actually, AB, it was Jimmy who was my teacher, not Percy. Percy, I learned some other things from him, like being a Tuskegee Airman and things like that, and learning how to play the bass, like it seemed like overnight. And he moved to New York, and next thing I know, he was on the recordings with everybody. But Jimmy Heath really gave me my music lessons and helped me to develop musically.
Yeah. Well, I think Jimmy was 8 years older than you. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So he was really in the world when you got started.
Yeah, and he was a little short guy, so I could beat him up. Actually, I got a picture of him on my grandmother's step in Wilmington, and I'm 8 years older than him. I mean, 8 years younger than him, and I'm bigger than him. I said, how can this be? And he's standing on a step behind me, and he's still not as tall as I am, and he's 8 years older than me.
Yeah, I used to tell him he was the shortest giant I knew.
Yeah, he said that himself.
Yeah.
He said, what's that he named himself? He had an album he called something, Big Man, Little Music, or Little Band, Little Man, Big Band, or something like that he had.
Yeah. Now, Philly, when you first started developing yourself as a musician in Philadelphia, Philly was jumping with musicians. It was loaded with some very, very strong players. Who were some of the ones that you came up with that you sort of developed yourself playing with?
Well, a few guys like Lee Morgan, Benny Golson. Jimmy, my brother, had a big band that used to rehearse in my mom's living room and have the music spread out around the dining room table for the different sections. And one day it would be the brass, and one day it would be the reeds, but they couldn't all be in there at the same time because there wasn't enough room. But he had a big band that he used to practice, and Specs Wright was the drummer, Charles Wright. And I never seen a guy other than Lewis Nash that could read music like these guys. And what happened was that Dizzy, Jimmy was playing with Dizzy at the time, Dizzy's big band. Him and Coltrane were both in the band. And Teddy Stewart was the drummer. And Teddy got sick and couldn't make a gig. So Jimmy said to Dizzy, man, my friend just got out of the army named Charles Wright. And Charles came in and sight read the whole band, the whole book, excuse me, like it was nothing. And that's how he got the nickname Specs, because he could read specs on the paper.
Oh, I never
That's
knew
how
that.
I got the nickname.
Did you take any lessons from him?
I did. He was my teacher for a long time. And then he was not available because he was out on the road with Carmen McRae for a while. Then he went out with Ray Bryant for a while, who was also Philadelphia. Ray Bryant.
Yeah, great piano player.
Yeah. And Bobby Timmons, of course, lived around the corner from us. And I used to see Bobby all the time. And he would come around for a little help from Jimmy about chords and things. And Jimmy kind of helped him out. Next thing I know, Bobby Timmons was making recordings in big time.
Yeah.
But McCoy Tyner, let me tell you about this guy. Now, Lee Morgan used to come down to South Philly, and Lee was like, he was too young to go in the clubs, but you had to be 18 to go in the club and play. So he was like 16 or 15, and he could play as good as all of us at that age. And so, so he said one day, he said, listen, man, I want you to hear this piano player. He lives uptown where I live. You know, Lee Morgan was from North Philly. So he said, I want you to hear this piano player. So I said, okay. So we got on a streetcar and we went up to North Philadelphia, and we go in a beauty salon. And it was McCoy Tyner's mother's beauty salon. And McCoy was in the back room, sleep on the couch. So we woke him up, and this guy sat down and played the piano like I Tatum or something. And man, I was surprised, but Lee had already heard him play. But also up there in North Philly was Spanky DeBress, Earl Warmack, Jimmy Rouser, who ended up in Ray Bryant's trio. And there was another bass player named Lou Mobley. He was older than all of us. But Lou Mobley was a local guy. Another guy named Jimmy Bond, who was a Juilliard graduate. And Jimmy Bond called me up one time and asked me would I like to make an album with Nina Simone. And I said, who the hell is Nina Simone? I didn't even know who she was.
Yeah. Yeah, so people used to hear her when she was playing in a little club and playing and singing. Back in, man, it must have been the 50s.
Well, also, you know what we rehearsed for this Gershwin album that I did with her? We rehearsed at Don Shirley's apartment, which was up over the Carnegie Hall, not Carnegie Hall, the other one on 7th Avenue.
Town Hall?
Not Town Hall. I mean, this one was huge, man. I never knew nobody. He had an apartment up over, I can't think of it at the moment.
Yeah, that was in that movie, The Blue Book.
Right.
The Green Book, rather, yeah.
Right. So we went up in that apartment up over the, can't think of the hall, man. It's real famous on 7th Avenue in the 30s. Carnegie Hall.
Carnegie, yeah.
Carnegie Hall. He had an apartment up over the Carnegie Hall. And we went up there and he had a grand piano, bigger than anything I've ever seen. And him and Jimmy Bond and Nina were graduates of Juilliard, and they were all classmates. That's how I got to know Jimmy Bond. And then Nina, then he introduced me to Nina, and we did the album with Nina and that was it. That's the only time I ever played with her. But I played a lot with Jimmy Bond. We played with Chet Baker together. We were in Chet's band, Bobby Timmons, Jimmy Bond, myself. But that's some of the people from Philadelphia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's amazing how many great musicians were there. I think people forgets a lot of those people nowadays. Like there are people who, like most jazz lovers have never heard of, like Hassan Ibn Ali.
Right. Count Langford was his other name. William
Yeah,
Langford.
yeah.
Hassan Ibn Ali.
Yeah, I heard a couple of tapes of him, but never heard any records. I don't think most people ever knew him, but he was a really great musician.
He recorded with Max. He recorded some things with Max Roach.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Look for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now tell me, you're playing with all these great musicians. Most people think that you just set up and you go into the set and you play as you play, but these great leaders have specific demands, and I know that they make of drummers. So tell me, what did I've always been wanting to ask a drummer like you about what the leaders asked of them, like what would somebody like J.J. Johnson want you to do?
Well, J.J., let me make a little point about him. J.J. was not that particular about what I was playing, because Elvin, I took Elvin's place with J.J. Elvin went on with who did he go with? I can't remember, but he had just left J.J.'s group. So J.J. had heard me play somewhere in Philadelphia, and he never had any demands. But now, on the other hand, when I played with Benny Golson and Art Farmer, Benny had a lot of, because he was a writer, arranger, so he had a lot of things he wanted to hear from a drummer. So Benny was a little more particular than most guys. And then I played with another piano player, which ended up Joe Zawinul.
Oh.
Yeah. And Joe Zawinul lived in California, not far from where I lived at the same time when I lived in California. Joe Zawinul was there. Then I met a guy that he was, they were schoolmates in Austria. And Joe Zawinul and this guy named Friedrich Guller. I heard you mention his name. You're the only person I know that even say his name.
Yeah, he's better known as a classical pianist.
Right, he was Beethoven specialist.
Beethoven specialist, yes.
Specialist, man. And this guy, him and Joe Zawinul were classmates. And he always wanted to be the jazz musician that Joe was. And Joe wanted to be the classical musician that he was. So those guys, they really disliked each other. But whatever they
How
did.
was Guller as a jazz musician?
Guller was good, but he wasn't Joe Zawinul. You know, he didn't have what Joe had, whatever Joe had. But I remember Ron Carter and I were in Austria on our way to Brazil with Guller. So when we got to Brazil, Guller was he had a serious attitude, man, about being the maestro and the greatest piano player in the world. So the people knew that he was Beethoven specialist. So when we got to Brazil, Guller had a big cigar lit, smoking it, and he laid it on this grand piano. And the people in the auditorium, the people who arranged the concert, went crazy. It was, oh, you can't have that on. And he lit, the cigar was lit. I mean, it wasn't an out cigar. It was burning, and he put it on the grand piano. So they were really mad about that. So then when he decided to have Ron and myself play the jazz portion, which was half of the show, which was supposed to have been jazz, and the other half was supposed to have been him playing Beethoven. So when they found out me and Ron were there to play jazz, they went crazy. So we never played, me and Ron never played anything in Brazil. So we just went to the concert every night and then went to a club called the Bayuca every night and heard these guys play the samba, which was incredible. And I haven't forgotten that yet. I don't know if Ron did, but there was a drummer named Zinho, and he was a big fat guy, looked like he may have weighed about 300 pounds, and he played with no shoes on. And and boy, but he had the samba beat like you wouldn't believe. I have never heard anything like that. And he had when he had his feet out, corns all over his toes and everything. But he played the most serious samba I ever heard. But me and Ron used to go in the club every night and listen to these guys because we didn't have no gig because Gula had got us fired. So they didn't want no jazz. They just wanted him to play the Beethoven, which he was special, man. I used to listen to him do that. He was wonderful.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't smoke a cigar and play Beethoven.
Not at the same time. But he played a cigar on the piano, man, and people went crazy.
Yeah. Now, one record that I really loved, I don't know anybody else who was as crazy about this record as I am, was the one you made with Yusef Lateef called what was it, Pieces of a Dream? It was the one where it was just tried to capture the effect of turning the radio dial from station to station, and you would stop at a country station. There'd be a little excerpt from that, and then it'd go by a soul station, and Yusef played this beautiful solo on this doo-wop tune in the still of the night, a gorgeous tune. And then there was it got to a blues called the Big Bass Drum. You remember that record?
I don't remember it, but I remember doing some real out things with Brother Yusef. And I think Hugh Lawson was the piano player at the time. And then Kenny Barron, Danny Mixon took Hugh's place. And then after Danny Mixon came Kenny Barron. And man, we did some adventurous things musically, with Brother Yusef. He would try anything. He tried anything. And he loved us to all bring music in. So he had a class at the time, AB, at the community college on 7th Avenue. And he insisted that Kenny and Bob Cunningham, who was the bass player, and Kenny and myself, we participated in his arranging class. And he insisted that we did that. And we had, at the term project, we both had, all three of us had a piece that we had to do for Yusuf's class. And mine was a string quartet, I think. And I knew absolutely nothing about strings. So you can imagine what that sounded like.
Very original.
Oh, man. Man, the tuning of violin was like abstract to me. But I got through it, and I Yusuf had a copy of the tape, and Kenny did something, I think it was for brass, and Bob did something, I forgot what his was. But we all had compositions that we had to submit as class projects. And Yusuf played it for me. I went to his house about 1 year before he died, and he had a copy of it, and he played it for me.
Well, yeah, he's another great and very gentle man, but a very profound man. The reason I brought it up was that I wanted that it's one of the funniest records I ever heard. And it seems like the humor is going out of the music today.
Everybody's very serious.
Yeah, but this, I always thought Yusef is very serious, but this was just a very funny record.
T-90T, yeah.
Yeah. It was called Pieces of a Dream. I'll send it to you, Tom. I'll send the title to you, Tom.
I don't remember the title, but I do remember him saying T-90T.
Yeah.
But Brother Yusuf was, he was unusual, man, because, AB, I love Brother Yusuf so much.
Yeah.
Until I wanted to play flute. like him. So he bought me a flute. You know, he said, I'm gonna get you a flute. And he got me not the one like he had. They cost $1 million. He just got a regular flute, a C flute for me. And he was giving me lessons. And man, I was coming along pretty good until the lesson got harder and harder and harder. Because he was trying to make me play the way that he played, you know, and that vibrato that he had was unbelievable. And he was trying to teach me how to get that and really play the flute like him. And the lessons got so hard, I said, listen, Brother Yusuf, if I'm gonna keep my gig with you playing drums, I'm gonna have to pay more attention to my drums and not so much attention to the flute. So I had to quit the flute. So I quit. I put the flute down. But I did make a couple of recordings with the flute. With my brother, Jimmy let me do it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Yusuf was all the way up to the very end. I mean, he was still stretching. He never stopped exploring, never stopped looking.
Never stopped. And he played a bassoon and oboe and alto flute, and of course the tenor saxophone. And I never heard him play alto saxophone, but I heard him play tenor. But he had several instruments that he played. He used to bring them all to the gig at one time. We got to Detroit at Soley Hartstein's club over there on 8 Mile Road in Detroit. And we played a set, and Yusuf had all of his horns on the bandstand, and he would put them in a little rack, and then we leave the bandstand and go in the back room. When we came back, his Haynes flute, which was a serious expensive flute, a Haynes, and he came back and the Haynes flute was gone, and the oboe was there and the bassoon was there, but somebody taking the Haynes flute. So after that, man, Brother Yusuf knew that he couldn't leave his instruments nowhere. So he used to bring all those instruments to the gig. And then when we had a break, he would take them off the stage with him. He learned the lesson, you know, that somebody would take something like that. So anyhow.
You know, my daughter is an oboist and she's in a wind quintet.
Oh, yeah.
United Winds. And that's oboe, flute, clarinet, bassoon, French horn. Am I leaving something out? Well, at any rate, so I saw Yusef at a conference once. Remember the jazz education conference everybody used to go to? And I asked him, I said, Yusef, he was selling some of his compositions. I said, Yusef, do you have a wind quintet? I didn't think he would have one, because who walks around with who writes music for a group like that? It just can't get around. And he reached in the pile and pulled it out, you know. So yeah, he was an amazing musician. I loved his work.
He was special, very special.
Did you know Coltrane in Philly?
Did I know him? Yeah, I was in the band with him, man. Now let me tell you about this guy. Now, Coltrane used to come to my mother's house and practice in Jimmy's band. So when he got out of the United States Army, I think he was in the Army. When he got out, he came and started to practice the alto. He was playing alto in the Army band, I think. And he came into Jimmy's band, and they were all playing, the two altos were playing. So I got a chance to really meet Coltrane, not and be his friend, but I got a chance to know who he was. And he wasn't the Coltrane that he became later in life. He was a regular guy. And this guy, so when he got a chance to make an album, he called me up. AB, I was like, I almost fell over. I couldn't believe it, man, that he would ask me to be on an album with him. I thought it was gonna be on one song or something. I made the whole album with him and Red Garland, I think it was on there, Paul Chambers, and Johnny Splon, a trumpet player.
Oh yeah.
Pittsburgh, Harrisburg. But anyhow, we made this album. So after that, I got to be really friends with John. Then there was a group called the High Tones, which was Shirley Scott playing the Wurlitzer organ, because the Wurlitzer would cover the front up and she could not worry about people looking under her dress when she was playing, because that other one was wide open down the bottom. And, guys would be standing there looking straight at all her stuff.
Oh,
so
man.
She got the Wurlitzer, which had that panel in the front of it. And man, that was the heaviest thing in the world to lift that up. And her husband, who just died, I think Bill just died in his 90s recently. And Bill Carney was his name. And Bill Carney sang, played the conga drums, and got the gigs for us. Coltrane was the tenor saxophone player. I was the drummer. And we played a lot around Philadelphia and outside of Philadelphia in little clubs, like weekends and stuff. And Coltrane, this guy, Bill Carney, was saying, man, if we want to work a little more, if you would get up on the bar and walk the bar and play.
Coltrane?
Yeah. Walk the bar and play.
I never know you walked the
that
bar.
honk and stuff that the guys, that honking, that one note.
Oh.
Coltrane used to do, he hated it. I mean, he hated it. So he would get up on the bar and walk around the bar, and instead of honking, he was playing all those notes that he played at the end of his life. He was just figuring it out. He had an opportunity to really explore his musicality, So he would play, instead of him honking one note, he would get up on the bar and blow his brains out, but he hated it. So one time I remember we were going to Canada from Philly, and Bill had this little Jeep, and he put the organ in the Jeep and the drums and all of our clothes for like 4 or 5 days, suitcases and stuff. And then he had a little trailer he hooked onto the Jeep. So we were driving, so Bill got tired of driving. I'm too young to drive. So he said, John, would you drive? So John said, yeah, man. You just tell me which way to go and we can do it. So he got in the car, and John, next thing I know, John's foot went down on the accelerator like it was a load of bricks or something, because his foot got tired, you know, of holding it up and doing the speed limit. And this thing was behind us that was trying to come around in front of us because all the weight was in this thing. And John, we flying down the highway, and John, I said, damn, John, I'm sitting up in the front. I looked over at his foot, man, his foot was mashed to the floor. I said, hey, John, why are you going so fast, man? He said, man, my foot got tired. Got tired of holding his foot up, but he just mashed it to the floor. Little John Coltrane stuff.
You know, Billy Taylor used to have this program at the Kennedy Center, and he'd have a guest come in, and he would interview the guests, and they'd play together. And so Jimmy was one of the guests, one of his guests one week. So there was a section of the show where people from the audience would ask questions of the guest. And this guy stood up and asked Jimmy if there was, said Jimmy, when you knew Coltrane in Philadelphia, was there anything about him that let you know that he was going to be as great as he became? And Jimmy said, well, yeah, Coltrane practiced more than the rest of us. So Billy Taylor said, so wait a minute, Jimmy. He said, I know how you practice. I mean, I know you, I mean, how you are with your instrument. I know you practice and you practice a lot. Jimmy said, yeah, I do. I practice a lot. I practice all the time. He said, but Coltrane didn't know who Willie Mays was. You know, you know, now that's dedication.
Yeah, you know what, and then also his wife used to have to take the horn off of his stomach. He'd be laying up there asleep, and he had the horn on it laying across his stomach, and he'd just be flapping the keys, blah, 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 blah. And his wife would go over and move the horn. That way he would stop, you know, just making those keys move.
Yeah.
So he did, he practiced, he didn't watch no baseball. He didn't do none of that. Jimmy was a serious sports fan.
Yeah.
But John was not.
Yeah. Well, one thing I know I wanted to ask you, you are a very funny man. I mean, I've been around you when you had the room screaming in laughter. Have you ever thought of doing stand-up?
I did, but I never got a call to do it.
No?
I did. I always thought about it, but I never got an invitation to go and do it. So maybe I'll get it now. But I learned all my stuff from Jimmy Heath, all of it, all that silly stuff I do.
Well, you funny than Jimmy, though.
Man, he was incredible, man. Me and him used to share a bedroom together in Philly. And Jimmy, actually it was the three of us were in the bed together, Percy and Jimmy and me. And they used to put me down the bottom at the foot, and them guys would put their stinking feet in my face. Cause I'd be trying to duck them, you know. And Jimmy and Percy both would do that to me. They didn't want me, number one, they didn't want me in the bed with them anyhow. Cause there was another bed over, you know, we could have had another bed, but they used to put their stinking feet in my face. And then these guys, AB, man, they used to bring women home from the clubs. And they'd be in the backyard having parties after the gig. Look out the window and I said, oh man, I want to do that, whatever them guys are doing. I hadn't even started to play yet, but I like that part where they would have all the women after the gig. Percy and Jimmy, both, they were ladies' men.
Yeah.
And those guys went to Paris real early in life. So they got a chance of the international thing.
The Heath brothers, when y'all started working as a group, first you started out as a trio, is that correct?
Yeah, well, it was actually, yeah, it was just me and Jimmy actually, because Percy was busy with the Modern Jazz Quartet and they had not retired yet. So we couldn't get Percy. So we had different bass players until Percy became available. And then next thing you know, it was the three of us, which was the hardest thing in the world. That's the hardest gig I ever had, trying to please my two brothers, with one telling me to do one thing and the other one telling me the opposite. Jimmy said, man, can you play a little more behind my solo? And Percy, hey man, he already played everything he knew on the last song. on the stage, man, loud. So Percy said one time, we were down there at Birdland. Me and Percy and Jimmy, and we playing a song of Jimmy's, and so Jimmy gets the microphone and says, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm gonna feature my young brother, Tootie Heath. And Percy says, behind me, he's standing behind me, real loud, you know, the audience can hear this now. He said, I don't know what he's gonna play on this one, because he played everything he knew on that last song. And I told Jimmy, I said, man, I want to kill this guy. So I went in the dressing room. It really hurt my feelings. So I went in the dressing room. I told Jimmy, I said, James, I gotta quit this, otherwise I'm gonna kill Percy, because I can't take this, you know. Because he was on me, man. Not Jimmy, but Percy. Jimmy always told me I wasn't doing enough. And Percy said that was too much. Whatever I was doing was, because he was a modern jazz quartet bass player.
Right.
So.
And John Lewis wasn't having a whole lot of notes on the drum.
No, wasn't a whole lot of fuss on the drums.
No.
Like a lady told me one time, we were playing at the Vanguard. So, you know, that bench that right over there near the bandstand.
Yeah.
So I was setting up my drums, and this woman and an elderly man came and sat down right there at that place. There wasn't nobody else in the club. And I was like setting up my drums. And that lady said, this boy gonna make a lot of fuss on them drums. We better sit somewhere. We better sit somewhere. She said he gonna make a lot of fuss. And I never forgot that.
One thing I wanted to discuss with you was you were involved with a couple of efforts by jazz musicians to try to organize themselves, to try to take some control of their own lives. And one of the first was the Collective Black Artists, which you and Jimmy were involved in. Can you talk a little bit about that, about what Collective Black Artists was and what it was trying to accomplish?
That was a group out of Brooklyn. It was originated, I think. And I don't remember. I remember doing some concerts with them without Jimmy. We weren't together, so that was my take on that. But it was kind of political, you know. And we needed, like, for instance, Max Roach called me up one time, AB, and you know, Max Roach was my hero, man. Yeah. As far as the music and as far as being a leader and civil rights person and everything. So man, he was my hero. So he called me one day and said, I'm in the black, I'm in that group out of Brooklyn.
Black artists.
Yeah, black artists. So Max said to me, said, man, can you come down to Union tomorrow? We're gonna demonstrate about the unfairness of these people, how they give these casual things, which was always white organizations giving something, a party for somebody or something, and they called them casuals. And Max said, yeah, we're gonna go down there and we're gonna try to put a stop to all this unfair stuff in the union. We pay dues and everything, and they give all the casuals to other people. They don't give them to us. So I said, oh yeah, fine, Max. So the next day was time to go to demonstrate. And I thought about it. I wasn't a very good political person at the time. Otherwise, I thought belonging to that organization was enough. That Black artist thing out of Brooklyn. I thought about it. I said, man, if I go down to Union and demonstrate, I ain't gonna get no more gigs with nobody. No more recordings, no more this. So when I didn't show up, Max called me the next day. Yo, man, he was real mad at me. And man, I never forgot it. I was upset that I had irritated Max Roach, of all people. I could have irritated somebody else, but Max Roach was my hero, man. So I pushed him the wrong way, pushed the wrong buttons on him. Yeah. And I told him I already belong to the Black organization out of Brooklyn.
Yeah.
He said, man, that ain't nothing. I asked you to be down the Union and so, man, we only had about 15 or 20 people down there. We needed you. Okay, goodbye, bang, hung up the phone. Huh. So Max Roach was through with me after that.
Yeah, well, sorry about that. He was a brilliant man, Max.
He was serious, man.
Yeah, very, very, very well informed, very widely read, very articulate.
Yes, he was.
Max and I usually list on my biography down from Elizabeth City, North Carolina, which is nowhere, there's nothing to brag about. Elizabeth City, town about 15,000 people up in the northeast corner of the state. But it was all surrounded by swamp. And but where I was really born, because my mother went to her mother's house to have me, was in a little teeny, hardly even a town, well, not even incorporated, called Newtown.
Wow.
Back up in the woods. And that's where Max is from.
Wow.
Max is from Newtown too. My father might have taught him. My father was a school teacher.
How about Thelonious? Where's Thelonious? He's from North Carolina too, right?
He's from farther west, in the western part of the state.
Okay.
He in Coltrane too. But my father might have taught Max. He said he taught. He had a little one-room schoolhouse that he was principal of. One room, 3 teachers, and he said a lot of roaches went there, and it was down in Newtown. So he probably taught him. Anyway. For what that's worth. Yeah. Okay, but how about another effort that the musicians made to take control was record label Strata East, the Charles Tolliver and
Stanley.
And then the Stanley Cowell, yeah.
Right.
Started, yeah. And that's I believe Strata East was the first recording label that the Heath brothers recorded for. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if it was the first one, but I know it was the most important one that we did as a group, because all of us had music on this label. Jimmy usually took care of most of the arranging and the music, but on this thing with Stanley, we could play. All of us had something that we were featured on, something that we had written ourselves, so that made it important. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Charles Tolliver didn't have anything to do with it other than being Stanley's partner. Oh. But Stanley was the one who put it together, the whole thing. He said, man, we got to go in the studio and record.
Now, was there anything different about trying to work with them as opposed to working with, say, CBS, which is where y'all went next?
Yeah, it was total difference because they had more control over what we played and the compositions. And Jimmy had most of the writing, because Jimmy had some success as a writer where Percy and I didn't, But so Jimmy's stuff was chosen to represent us. And then they wanted to change all of that around to make it more commercial. And that's when Percy really went. He didn't like that idea of them having to change Jimmy's music around because it wasn't commercial enough.
How did they want to change it?
Well, they wanted to maybe put a singer with some of his arrangements, or have some other instrumentation on some of those recordings Jimmy wanted to have. tubas and brass stuff. They didn't want that. But Stanley, with the Strata East, we could do anything we wanted to, which was quite a thing to be able to make an album in those days and play everything you want to play without the record company interfering.
Yeah. Well, okay. Shortly after that, you moved to Denmark. Why Denmark? How did you happen to go to Denmark?
Well, what happened with that, AB, is that I was rehearsing with a group that George Russell had put together, a sextet, and Thad Jones was the trumpet player in the sextet. So George had some surgery. We had a tour coming up, and George had some surgery, and we got to Europe. We had to come back because George had some instruments were sewed up inside of him that weren't supposed to be. Interesting group. We're on tour now. We get to Europe, and George has an infection because of something that was sewed up inside of him accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets this infection, so he has to come back to the States, to the hospital wherever he did this, and they had to get this out of him. So then we go back. Then Thad can't make it, so they get Don Cherry. Don Cherry, now this was a surprise for me because I had been hearing Don Cherry for the longest time because I lived in California as well. So I knew about him. So we go to over there on Bank Street and have a couple more rehearsals. And Don reads all the music like it ain't nothing. And we were all surprised. I was surprised, but Brian Trenham, was the trombone player. Garnett Brown played the trombone. Garnett. Brian played there was a Don Cherry, tenor saxophone, who died later, lived in Europe for a while. Can't think of his name right now, but anyhow, the sextet got back together with Don. So we go back to Europe now. Then we go to Paris. And AB, this is the first time I ever been booed in my life. We went to Paris and played George's music. He had an arrangement on You Are My Sunshine in 12 keys at once. and the audience, they booed us. And then man, Thelonious was on the same bill. And when he walked out, and Thelonious did his little dance, they booed him too. So George said, well, man, if they can boo Monk, they can boo me anytime. So then we go from there to Sweden. So when we get to Stockholm, the guys in the club says to me, you want to be the house drummer? We have an opening and you can play with most of the people that live here in Europe and Scandinavia, and you could play here for blah, blah, blah. So anyhow, I took it and I stayed there for maybe 5 or 6 years. And then I went to Denmark after that. And this is where the fun started. Because in Denmark, the club owner loved the tenor saxophone. So he had Dexter, who lived there, Don Bias lived there, Frog, we call him Frog, you know what I'm talking about.
Ben Webster?
Ben Webster lived there. Johnny Griffin was in and out of there. Johnny Griffin lived in France. So me and Kenny Drew and Niels Henning had the house trio.
That's a good trio.
Yeah, now the difference in Sweden in that, because Sweden, I played with the Swedish guys. But when I got to Denmark, I played with Kenny Drew and Niels. Every night was the same trio. So with all these different people, Joe Henderson, Jimmy Heath, Dexter Gordon, Clifford Jordan, all these tenor saxophone players were featured because this guy, the club owner, loved the tenor. So then he got, Abdul Ibrahim to come with a trio and play with me and Niels, and Kenny, of course, took off that week. So we had, his name was Dollar Brand at the time.
Yeah.
And we played with him, Abdul Ibrahim, which we loved that music. It was great. And then
He's still sounding great.
yeah, Idris Suleiman came, trumpet player.
Mhm.
Remember Idris?
Yeah, I do.
Idris came and played a week or so. And I think Kenny Durham came and played a week too. So man, we had some great experiences. So after about 6, 7 years of that, I decided to come back to New York. So I'm on a boat coming back to New York from Copenhagen. And I get a telegram, Tootie, if you want to be in Herbie Hancock's band, come to the Vanguard when you get off the ship, because Pete LaRocca is the drummer and he don't want to do the gig. He got sick of it or something. He got tired of it. He didn't like it or whatever, but he decided not to do it. So Clifford Jordan was playing the tenor at the time, and Johnny Coles and Garnett Brown and Buster Williams. So when I get to New York, I go down to Vanguard and rehearse with Herbie, and we're gonna open that night. So that was it. That was my introduction to Herbie. And we opened that night, and then I stayed with Herbie for about 2 or 3 years. of traveling around New York and where else we go? We went to San Francisco and a few other places.
What year is this?
Huh?
What year is this?
Oh, now that's a good question.
Well, I don't want to push you on it. I know how it is.
I can't give you no
Just
dates.
run together after a while.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
But Herbie,
Okay, go ahead. You're in San
Herbie,
Francisco.
well, that was a great experience. You know, I think after Clifford left, Joe Henderson came, and Herbie and Joe Henderson and Buster Garnett Brown.
Oh, these are some great names, man.
That was the group. We stayed
Buster
together
Williams,
for.
I think, people don't. That's another musician people don't know enough about. I think he was one of the great bassists ever.
Oh, Buster.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Me and Buster's still around, man. I just saw Buster a couple of years ago in the Village in New York. I was playing with Ethan Iverson and Buster came in the club. But I just saw him. But Buster, I had been around. You know, I used to play with Buster's father when in Camden, New Jersey, when his father lived in Philadelphia. This is before Buster was a little boy. And his father used to play like parties and stuff like that. A very commercial bass player. And I used to play with Buster's father. Charlie Williams is his name. And I played with him for a while.
Yeah.
Before I left Philly.
Okay, so how'd you get to California?
Now, California was after when I got off the boat and played with Herbie at the Vanguard. I think his next thing was in San Francisco and then LA. And we got the chance to be in LA. So then I met Beverly, my wife. And that was it. We've been together for 43 years. Ouch.
I got 10 on you with my wife.
You got 10?
I got 10 on you. I got 53 years.
Oh, man. Well, this girl here stayed with me through all this crazy shit I've been, excuse me. You got to clean that up. I use the nasties. I told you they slip out every now and then.
Yeah, I know.
But anyhow, she stayed with me through all this awful stuff I've been through health-wise, you know, which I had a couple of run-ins with your boy, the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Tried to invite me and I wouldn't go.
I'll stay here, man.
Yeah, I stay here.
Yeah.
I got CAB Spellman.
Yeah. So, but did that put a strain on the Heath brothers?
Yeah. I tell you what, the Heath brothers developed right after Brother Yusuf. I went with Brother Yusuf for a while. And then the Heath brothers developed after that. And I forgot the drummer who took my place. A guy from Pittsburgh. I can't think of his name. He's still around too. Played with Yusuf. He took my place with Yusuf and I went with my brothers, which was a mistake because my brothers would beat me to death, man. They beat me, put their feet in my face all the way on the bandstand.
Changed, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now you had, this is kind of hard to imagine, but you had Connie K left the MJQ for a while, and you went and joined them. It's kind of hard to imagine you in the MJQ.
Connie K was, oh man, special. You come on, a guy with a special sound, and I just figured it out. Why Connie's thing was so different from everybody else, because Connie was from the islands. And that was his experience, was that island drumming. It wasn't jazz like mine was Philadelphia, New York, you know. Connie came to that later, but he brought his own style with him, which was island drumming, quite different. So Connie, I think Connie had a stroke, was the last event he had health-wise, and he couldn't play no more. So between my brother and John, they got me because Milt liked Mickey Roker. He had Mickey Roker to play in Connie's place for a while. But John didn't particularly like Mickey. I don't know what it was, but
John Lewis. Me.
Go ahead.
Uh-huh.
So he got me to play. Percy told John, you know, my brother can do this, you know. So 1969, I remember, I get a gig with the MJQ at the Blue Note in New York. And all the drummers asked me, Ben Riley asked me, what happened to your foot, man? Did you break it or something? Because I didn't hear no foot. I said, man, I don't need to play. You play the foot, and I'm gonna do this gig and worry about the foot later. I said, Ben used to come down and make jokes. He said, man, you know, I don't hear no foot. Where's your foot? You broke?
John Lewis did much more than the bass drum.
John Lewis didn't care too much for all of that.
No.
So anyhow, I understood what he wanted and tried my best to do what Connie was doing. And it survived the group for about 2 years. We went to Europe, we went to Japan, we went quite a few places, about a year or two. And then I played around New York, couple of things. But John didn't like my cymbals. He said, oh no, he said, we got to do something about those cymbals. And I couldn't figure out what, you know, I'm playing the cymbals with everybody. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with the cymbals. It was that he had some idea of what Connie's sound was on the cymbals. And so he tried to get Connie's cymbals for me. And somebody had taken Connie's cymbals and pawned them.
Oh.
So he couldn't get Connie's cymbals. So I got some cymbals from a cymbal company, which was okay for him. He was satisfied, but he did not like the original stuff I had. No. So I had to change all of that.
Well, there was a lot of this, it seemed to me, I've heard about a lot of dissatisfaction in the modern jazz quartet because Milt Jackson and Percy wanted to swing a little more. And John Lewis wasn't having it.
Well, it was actually Milt and John Percy was satisfied with John's advancement to the music, which was basically classical, because that's what he'd been studying. But Milt did not like that. Milt had a problem with all of that. And so Percy and Milt kind of had a little difference about John. And you know, these guys, it's weird, man. They were together 40 some years and they rode in limousines, 2 different limousines to the airport, one with Connie and one with Milt and one with Percy and John. And then they're on the airplanes, first class, Milt had the in seat and John sat inside there's only 2 seats, you know, in first class. And Percy and Connie sat on the other side. So when I got in the group, we got on the plane one time, and I remember Milt going off because they had given John his seat. And boy, Milt had the flight attendant, he was going crazy. He got this guy in my seat, you know, he's in my seat, this is my seat. And then the lady didn't know what he was talking about, but he finally straightened that out. And me and Percy sat on the other side. We were okay. But I rode in the limo with John. And John and I got to be really good friends, you know, because I'm sucking up to him, because I know that, you know, I want to keep the gig and I'm trying to be his friend and all of that. So
yeah, the money must have been good.
Oh, the money was serious. So AB, we went to dinner at night and we would finish dinner and have some drinks, you know, when me and John would be real drunk at the end of the evening, and we'd be holding each other by the shoulders and walking down the aisles, going to our rooms in the hotel. And the next morning, I come out the room and say hello to John, and John wouldn't speak to me. So Milt said, I told you he's funny style. Milt said, he wouldn't speak to me. I said, how you doing, John? He don't say nothing, just keep walking on by. And that night we was buddies, you know?
Yeah.
So
He was from Albuquerque.
yeah, he was, yeah, Albuquerque guy, that's right.
Well, I thank you very much for talking with me this afternoon.
Thank you,
It's been
AB.
a good conversation. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Me
And we'll
too.
hang out next time the festival comes live, goes back on stage. We'll hang out in Santa Fe for a minute.
Yeah, if I'm still around, I will definitely come and hang out with you.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm gonna save you a seat in hell when I get there.
Make sure it's got a good cushion to it, okay?
Fascinating conversation, so much fun. I was sitting back there smiling the whole time, and it's such a treat. AB, it's a treat every time you're there, and Tootie, just fantastic to see you. Can't wait to see you in person. These conversations that we have in this NEA Meet the NEA Jazz Masters series that we have, it just adds so much to our knowledge about this amazing art form we call jazz, and about the people who've made it what it is, which is you guys. And I thank you deeply. I want to thank Reinhard Lorenz of First Eye Films for putting it together. And I want to thank the families, friends and families of A.B. Spellman, Tootie Heath, who were helped with the production of things and of great assistance. And we really appreciate it. And finally, I want to thank once again our sponsors and funders, including the National Endowment for the Arts, the Command Foundation, City of Albuquerque, Lynn Slade and Susan Zimmerman, and many more. Can't wait to get back to our live performances and conversations, but in the meantime, these online activities are wonderful substitutes. And I want to remind everybody to remember to check out all of our New Mexico Jazz Festival revisited videos, which we're doing this year in lieu of the festival that had to be canceled, and which will be airing over the next few months. And once again, thank you, Tootie Heath, A.B. Spellman, and it's great to see you even on the computer screen. It's really wonderful to see you.